Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. Great to have you with us. America as we know it is no more. Yesterday, we watched a former president and the leading candidate for president this year be convicted on 34 counts of total, well, as the president put it, bullshit. A jury of 12 New York Marxists, totally brainwashed by a Marxist Dem judge and prosecutor, listening to the words of a porn star and a convicted liar, well, they convicted him on that. President Trump had a few words for the Marxist judge after he heard that verdict.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man. And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble, but this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
May 30th, 2024. You can mark it down as the day justice died in the state of New York. As if a guilty verdict wasn't enough for the Marxist lowlife, Judge Juan Merchan, he has set a sentencing date of July 11th, just 4 days before the GOP convention. To take in all of this and where America goes from here, we asked Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, to join us here. He is the president of Judicial Watch. The important work they do is critical now in this crisis in America. And now here is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. And Tom, your thoughts as we watched this verdict in this Manhattan courtroom brought by the corrupt Marxist Dems that make up the power structure, certainly in New York.
You know, Lou, one of the reasons I'm always outraged is because, believe it or not, I'm an optimist. I thought maybe there'd be a juror or two who saw through this canard and would refuse to go along. And of course, the ultimate optimism was that he'd be acquitted. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be surprising. It's certainly predictable, given the way this proceeding has been run, that this kangaroo court proceeding ended up in an absurd kangaroo-type verdict. And I don't know how else to describe it other than absurd. What is the basis for finding this man, President Trump, guilty of anything? There was no evidence. The jury should never even had these charges. This trial should never have been prosecuted. And certainly Judge Merchan himself should have been nowhere near this case, given his evident bias and compromised status and conflicted status. Mm-hmm. And then, I read, believe it or not, the 55-page jury instructions. We've all been kind of getting scattershot descriptions of it. And I read it and I thought, oh my gosh, this is just designed to corral the jurors into making a guilty verdict. And that's what they got. And as President Trump has noted repeatedly, this was over for him once the venue was chosen. He wasn't going to get a jury that was going to treat him fairly. And in this case, the jury failed to put politics aside clearly because there's no way the evidence of the law should have resulted in this outcome. And it's a terrible day. And right now, our elections are officially compromised. And the question is, will the election outcomes result in a result that Americans have confidence in, despite this compromised attack on our elections? But I don't know.
Yeah, I hope, honestly, Tom, I hope that no American will indeed assume anything positive about our federal government, this Biden regime, the Democratic Party. They have immense culpability. The Democrat Party put Joe Biden at the top of a ticket, and beneath him, Kamala Harris. Those are two people that they knew were mentally deficient, in at least Biden's case, cognitively impaired, both corrupt, and without question. This is a country that is now under the control of the Marxist Dems, the deep state itself. There isn't an agency that isn't controlled by the Biden regime, the Marxist Democrats. The Democrat Party doesn't have a center. It doesn't have a right wing. It is wholesale Marxist and authoritarian, totalitarian in impulse, and I think in intent. I don't see an exception to it. And to be so venal as to go after President Trump, a former president of the United States, was just convicted in a New York courtroom by 12 Marxist jurors. As far as I can see, they simply threw their hands up and said, "Whatever you say, boss." Merchant, he's a product and a fixture in that party and in that ideology. We are right now watching this country under the control. Make no mistake, this means that our legal system is fully compromised, corrupt, and this Marxist Democrat Party controls all of the levers of power.
Yeah, and I think to the degree the appellate process is going to work, it needs to work as quickly as possible. This is an emergency for the rule of law that this be overturned. And I'll defer to the lawyers about how that process will work and the opportunities for Trump to do that, both here in New York or up in New York and at the federal level, if the state in New York doesn't want to vindicate Trump as they should. But on the other hand, now Trump's a free man, right? I'm assuming the gag order has been lifted. He can come out and tell the truth about what happened. Before that, Merchant was, until this day, controlling the campaign, holding him political hostage. So hopefully he can speak more freely now and campaign in earnest and maybe get this behind him. And I think Americans, and I'm dead serious about this, should pray for President Trump, not because of politics. I'm not saying, one candidate should win, one candidate should lose. That's not my job at Judicial Watch. But as far as I'm concerned, Trump has had his civil rights violated. He's a crime victim. He's been abused like few other American citizens in the history of this grand republic. And in doing so, those doing the abusing, as you have highlighted, have undermined our republic in a significant way. And, day-to-day court operations will continue across the land. But in key areas where the American people are paying attention to the operations of the judicial branch, that branch has failed.
Yeah. Because
it's been compromised from within by political judges, dishonest politicians who abuse their powers as prosecutors, both at the federal and state level. And I call it the Borg, B-O-R-G, that has just enabled it and praised it and allows it to go on. As our friends in the Republican Party, and I use the term friends loosely, just kind of whisper past the graveyard as this continues.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're exactly right. We're talking with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, and we're talking about a dark day, and I'm sure longer, in America. We'll be right back with Tom Fitton. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back now. We're talking with Judicial Watch's president, Tom Fitton. Tom, this is a dark day, and you are an optimist, and I've known you to be for many years. But the reality is, I am usually very skeptical. I try to be very realistic to the point that sometimes I'm less than optimistic. But right now, I think there's one great clarity here that presents itself. And that is either the American people act now, or we lose our nation. We lose our constitutional republic. We cannot tolerate having the Marxist Dim Party in charge of our federal government. We can't tolerate, in point of fact, Marxist Dims any longer having sway over this nation, its policies, domestic or foreign. We have to get it right. Take this country back, take back our government, and do so forthwith.
Well, we have to ensure the rule of law is followed no matter who's in power. I mean, we can't wait for elections to demand that the government obey the law. It just can't, obviously that's a check on some of the wild abuses, but it's not sufficient in the meantime. Trump's had his freedom constrained. Who knows what's going to happen to him in July when he goes to the sentencing hearing before Merchant. I mean, he's facing the rest of his life in jail because of this kangaroo court proceeding up there. So, an election isn't going to protect him.
Yeah.
And there has to be the rule of law, and we should expect the judiciary to do it. We should expect our elected leaders to stand up for it. But, the past is prologue, unfortunately, in politics. Politicians don't change their stripes. And you can be sure, and Biden basically said, I'm going to use this case, this prosecution, and this sham, shady verdict to use as a talking point in my campaign.
Yeah.
And so now it's the next series of harassing prosecutions that will continue down in Florida. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. Will they issue rulings that will protect Trump a bit more? We'll see. But in the meantime, we just have to factor this in to, as you point out, the big political battle in the months ahead. And we'll see how it impacts the election.
And I think the American people, Tom, have to understand this is a part of a piece. We have watched them, what was the word? Wiretap. Donald Trump, mocked by the left-wing corporatist press for using the term wiretap, but indeed he was, as both a candidate and a president, as you well know. And from that, we watched as our intelligence community went after Donald Trump to overthrow his presidency once he was in. And then we watched two special counsel investigations, almost 2 years of FBI investigations separate from those. We watched two impeachments. And now here we are in the 9th year watching his political persecution. And people are saying, we can't wait anymore, I believe, right now in homes all across America. This is the time we make a decision about what we'll tolerate. We have accepted so much. We have slumbered, and we have taken on just an enormous loads of acceptance and toleration that we should never, ever have permitted.
Yeah, the danger is that, are we going to lose all of our freedoms tomorrow? No. But if this becomes the norm, I think we'll be kind of like that frog that gets slowly boiled, right? You don't kind of know what's happening. And our republic will be a zombie constitutional republic. We'll have the forms. There'll be a constitution. There'll be the pretense that people are obeying the rules. The politicians are obeying the rules. The bureaucrats and the deep staters are obeying the rules, but they're not. And if you're a political opponent of the deep state, as you call it, the Marxist, the Marxist colluders, I call it the abusers. You can call it by party, you can call it by ideology. And Democrats, not all Democrats are communist, but too many of them are using communist tactics to abuse their opponents. Yeah. That's what we should be concerned about.
I think there are far more of them who are communists, by the way, than
that may be true.
Than you acknowledge. I can't find a right wing within the Democratic Party. Yeah. I can't find a moderate in the Democrat Party. And Hakeem Jeffries would have expunged them if I think he detected them. Yeah. We're at a point where it's clear. This administration, this regime under Biden, he's a puppet, of course, but the Marxists who are running this regime mean to destroy our allies, embrace our enemies, and disfigure everything about American heritage. And they have a head start on us. And either we get serious and have the capacity to deal with this issue, because our system of government has failed us, Tom. We don't have checks and balances to what we have experienced over the past 20 years. The takeover of the country by the Marxists, and they've done it silently. They have insinuated themselves into every aspect of power in Washington, D.C., in Albany, New York, Manhattan, New York. There has to be a countervailing force, and I think that countervailing force has to rise with the consent of the governed. Either the American people are reasserted for representation in the U.S. Congress, the Senate, and the White House, or we are lost, and it has to happen now.
Yeah, we are in many ways facing the end of America. We haven't even talked about the Biden border crisis and how that invasion impacts our ability to govern ourselves as well. And so what Judicial Watch does, as you know, is that we try to ensure the rule of law is vindicated, try to figure out what the government's up to, and in a way that educates Americans and pressures those who know better to do better to protect the republic. And, one of the reasons, in my view, that Trump has been able to still advance his First Amendment rights in a successful way is because, frankly, your work, our work, educating Americans about the challenges he faces, and that he's a victim of government abuse in a way we've never seen before in our history. And Americans kind of recognize that. And, my guess is, maybe, once again, I'm maybe being too nice for your taste, Lou, but my guess is there are many Democrats, because not all Democrats literally, the politicians, I think, tend to be too extremist for my taste. But there's a cadre of Democratic voters who are a little bit aghast at what's going on. And indeed, Trump seems to be making inroads among them, certainly in the minority community. So there's always going to be an opposition, but as you're highlighting, we got to make sure it's effective. And, the opposition needs to win. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about those who support the rule of law versus those who would overturn our republic.
Exactly. And to your point, I agree that there are moderate voters, but they can't find representation in the halls of Congress or the Senate. And they are moving, as you say, in large numbers, if the polls are correct, toward President Trump. And I think, by the way, this will hasten that migration from Democrat and independent to MAGA and President Trump's first America First policies. So help me God. We're talking with Tom Fitton. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
So we're back now. We're talking with Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch. And I guess the question that is on the minds of every American who cares about this republic and understands that we are now wounded as never before because this is a conspiracy that was carried out. It was strategic. It was long planned. And it was simply, as I said at the outset, part of a piece following 9 years of political persecution to destroy one man. They've taken it to a level now that means that it is all on the line. So I think most people are wondering, what can I do? What can we do? And why should I trust any more of these Republicans, the rhino fools in the Republican Party, the Democrats who have created this mess and who mean obviously to take over all of the levers of power, take over this government?
Well, you see what you're able to do as a citizen under our Constitution and the rule of law. And you do everything that you're able to do as a citizen. You can vote. You can support organizations like Judicial Watch. You can personally participate in the election process, either working for candidates of your choice or actually working at the polls for candidates of your choice or working at the polls as a poll official and an employee of the government who helps run elections. There's always massive hiring that takes place if you're interested in literally working at the polls. That's one way to ensure, at least as best as you're able under law, that you're doing your part and sharing your views about these issues. If you think corruption is important, no politician is going to pay attention if you don't tell them about it. And it's a challenge to do so. But believe you me, talking to your politicians about these issues does have an impact, especially if there's an uprising of public sentiment one way or the other. Politicians are the most sensitive animals on earth when it comes to the views of the public. And they may ignore them, but they all know what those views are because they feel it on a day-to-day basis in their offices and in their travels and their work with the public. And certainly don't shrug off the idea that you don't have the ability, that doesn't make a difference if you communicate your concerns with your elected members of Congress or other officials.
I hate to be the skunk nearing the punch bowl, but here it is. I'm watching the brand new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He's betrayed the conference and their constituents countless times already, and he's only been there half a year. He is, I think, awful. Mitch McConnell, he is not a patriot. He is, without question, has a sinecure. He is a power patrician sitting in Washington, D.C., lording it over the peasant senators from those outbound states. It just isn't happening. The Republicans have been enfeebled. They're meek. They are milquetoast. They don't have any passion that I can find that would cause me to get very excited about the prospects for the Republican Party being a countervailing influence to the horrors that we are witnessing.
Well, I don't necessarily dispute much of what you said. I might on the edges in some specific words, but that's irrelevant, right? And, the question is, in our system of government, there has to be an opposition. And to the degree that folks and viewers who are listening here now want to be that opposition, these are the things they need to do to make their views known. Now, the Republican Party is an imperfect vehicle. And I think there are Democrats who agree with me on these issues of fighting corruption and such.
Do you really?
There's got to be accountability. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think if you do polling on corruption, it's like an 80% issue. If you do polling on government transparency, it's like an 80% issue. What American, other than a communist, is in favor of government corruption? So this is an issue I think that politicians of both parties should pay more attention to. And I tell you, it's no surprise that Biden's going to run on this anti-corruption scheme that he's pretending to be pursuing against Trump. It's actually corrupt to what he's doing, but he's going to be the man who's against Trump corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, if it didn't work with their own voters, they wouldn't be saying it.
Well, I'm not sure what they would be saying. I think what they're saying is what they think that they can get away with.
Well, that may be true too.
The other part of it is they can get away with much because the corporatist media, I mean, think about it. The establishment media is corrupt through and through. I mean, when you talk about Jake Tapper, a former, left-wing flack, when you talk about half the people on MSNBC, they're all, activists for the party, and I don't mean the middle of the party. Think about it. I mean, we're watching a media that is subsumed by the left. There's no question about it. And so you get a choice. Either they take orders. I hate it. I'd love to know what happens when they get conflicting orders from on high from their executives. So do they follow the corporatist dicta, or do they follow the Marxist dicta? Who has the most power? The Marxists are winning.
Well, what I found interesting about the verdict is all those journalists are involved now in criminal conspiracies, according to Alvin Bragg. Every time they talk to a politician about how to suppress a negative story, all the catch and kill activities that mainstream journalists engage on behalf of favored politicians, usually of the left, all that is potential criminal activity, according to Alvin Bragg, Judge Merchant, and the 12 jurors who rubber stamped this kangaroo court proceeding and abused Trump with a guilty verdict. So those 51 deep staters who tried to signed that letter to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop, prosecute them under these new rules.
They should be.
What politician wouldn't be prosecutable under these new rules?
I'm liking this idea better and better, Tom, as you lay it out.
Well, I mean, that's the new rubric here. And now whether I would put myself in your shoes, you're going to say, well, Republicans are never going to do that, right? Conservatives are never going to do that. I don't know. But now they can, because these are the new rules.
My question is, what Republican other than President Trump, a handful of senators, and I mean a handful, and perhaps maybe as many as 100 Republican congressmen would, but that does not make a majority, and it does make you question about how tough it's going to get before we get tough.
Well, and I think what Trump should do if he's elected is he should immediately appoint a special counsel. He should do it, not the Justice Department. He should appoint a special counsel. Send him down to Florida, convene a grand jury, and investigate this conspiracy against him to deprive him of his civil rights under color of law.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think that we're going to have a lot of choices and directions to go in if we're going to prevail in this, and we simply must prevail. Tom Fitton, thanks for being with us here today. An ugly day. No question, New York does not have a judicial system. They have nothing more than an extension of their political system that has black robes and pretense. It's something called justice. They're so far remote from it, they don't even recognize it should they see it in anyone else's courtroom. Tom Fitton, thank you for being with us, as always.
You're welcome, Lou. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us today. Thanks to Tom Fitton. And be sure to join us here tomorrow for the Great America Saturday Show. And be sure to join us tonight for Lou Dobbs Tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, on Frank Speech, Rumble, Roku, and X. Thank you, everybody. God bless you, and may God bless America.